everything's fine on 93.9 Dublin South FM.
Thank you. If you have heard of River of Blood speech in 1968 and Island of Strangers speech of 2025, you would have guessed our topic of discussion today. It is controversial and highly consequential, most recent, hence we are talking about it today. Migration, international migration, has been cornerstone of human civilization since the beginning of time. From early human dispersals out of Africa to great diasporas across continents, the movement of people have shaped societies, cultures, economies, and nations. However, modern times have complicated this fundamental human process through the imposition of legal and political borders and the increasing ability of governments to control who moves, when, and why. The passports, the visas, they are the restrictions of the modern times. One of the most ambitious modern experiment in freedom of movement of people had been European Union, if you would recollect. And it allowed citizens of 27 member states, formerly it was 28 before the Brexit, and it allowed to live and work across borders without visas. This policy have been deeply aligned with the ideals of inclusion and economic integration, resulting in collective progress. It was not only supported by labor mobility but also strengthened the social cohesion and the economic development across the European continent. That is the learning. Similarly, if you look at the open border arrangement between the United States and Canada, though not as open and liberal as the European Union, but they have proven mutually beneficial. Economic, social, and security cooperation between these two North American countries have strengthened as a result of coordinated immigration policies. I remember until 2006, people of Canada or America did not require to have a passport to travel to and fro from US and Canada. Historically, if you look, Britain's own development have been heavily reliant on immigration. Remember post-World War II reconstruction and then invitation of the Windrush generation. Waves of migration from East Africa and South Africa after the crisis, they all played a critical role in rebuilding British infrastructure, healthcare, and the economy in general. The corner shops of Britain are the footprint of the migration and the value they have brought to the British society. How quickly can politicians forget this fundamental reality? How can the politicians forget this foundational reality of Britain? If you see, until 1994, Britain experienced nearly net zero migration, meaning the immigration and the emigration balanced out each other. It was only in the wake of globalization that immigration surged, but ironically, Britain benefited immensely from globalization. What could be seen as a form of legal colonization, if I can say, of labor from developing countries, yet now the present government and the few political parties in Britain attempt to close the gates that once brought prosperity to Britain. In principle, human migration is a natural movement, and it is a movement from zone of instability such as war, famine, persecution, and it goes to region of peace, opportunity, and social order. If people flee from Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, parts of Africa, Middle East, if they flee from those areas into Europe and Britain, the receiving nation must also confront their own geopolitical footprints in those conflicts. The root lies there. The root of the illegal migration lies there. So there is an element of accountability for the refugees and the illegal migration that is currently unfolding. In the last decade, the UK had reversed its trajectory. Brexit became a watershed moment that challenged the very ethos of free movement and inclusive development. The promise, the political promise, the slogan of taking back control included shutting down the option of legal and economic vital migration. The economic consequences have been severe, from labor shortages to inflation in basic goods and, of course, in the construction industry. Britain is sitting on cost of living crisis. That's the economic consequence. Historically, European powers have lacked natural resources and large labor forces to run the country. This is no news. But then, this has been the very reason for pushing the European powers towards colonial expansion. Much of their accumulated wealth has roots in this exploitative global history. Today, exploration takes the form of trade agreements, multilateral economic blocs such as World Trade Organization and European Union. So, the question is, today, what has gone wrong with Britain? I take back to our initial reference to 1968, when Enoch Powell gave his infamous River of Blood speech, warning against rising immigration. Despite his inflammatory rhetoric at the time, he received significant public support and it sparked protests and strikes across the country. This anti-immigrant sentiment, while it subdued over a period of time, it has never truly disappeared. Last week, the current British Prime Minister delivered what I am saying as the Island of Strangers speech. While it is less toxic than the Powell speech of 1968, it does reflect an undercurrent of suspicion toward immigrants. And it is supported by a white paper which is proposing stricter immigration policies like heightened English language requirements or a 10-year wait for permanent residency. The same government, Sir Keir Starmer government, also claims that these steps are aimed to establish a common civic standard, a common behavior standard in the country, and also to bring net migration to zero. According to me, time will tell, it is not economically practical, but also it is socially counterproductive. Traditionally, Labour Party has been open to migration, yet its recent shift appears to be a reaction to the gaslighting by the Reform UK Party, whose platform has been anti-migrant. Its leader, Nigel Farage, uses a statistics that in the past 20 years, the net migration has quadrupled. It may be statistically correct, but the context matters. According to London's mayor, immigrants contribute an average of £12,000 a year to the national economy, while it consumes only £4,000 in public services. Moreover, according to him, 1/3 of fast-growing UK businesses are immigrant-led. So the British economy observes a vital role that immigrants play in its growth and development. And the nation must not forget that both the former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and the current leader of opposition Kemi Badenoch, they come from the Indian and the Nigerian background. Yet, the populist rhetoric of anti-immigrant sentiment is outweighing the economic logic. As of now, there are over 100,000 vacancies in social care sector. 131,000 unfulfilled national health services roles are open. And this looming shortfall is also hampering the government's target of building 1.5 million homes. Fundamentally, these are positions that the young British do not aspire to fill. A generational disinterest in low-wage jobs have created a national labour identity crisis in Britain. And despite this, public discourse remains fixated on reducing migration. The Brexit-era xenophobia still exists, still simmers. We saw the aftermath of Southport riots, which were targeted and fueled by xenophobia. According to UK's parliament, 20% of the NHS staff are foreign nationals and 30% of nurses are immigrants. These numbers should inspire gratitude, not hostility, and this must be taken note of by the Reform UK Party and the current Labour Party. Unfortunately, immigration policy shift with the political winds. Worse still, political narratives conflate legal and illegal migration. Europe and UK are currently facing high levels of unauthorized migration. Much of it is driven by human trafficking. Since 2021, nearly 700 people per week have been crossing the English Channel and they are in unsafe conditions. The boats are collapsing, people are dying in the English Channel. This is the true crisis. not the legally sanctioned migration that props up the national institutions of Britain and Europe. The current government's approach is only muddling up the real issue of legal and illegal migration, and there is a criminal network known to the government which is facilitating this migration. Targeting legal migration will not solve this problem. You may use the statistics, a distorted one quoting the case of Coventry, a town in Britain where 28% of the residents are born outside the UK, which they say is twice the national average. That's fine. But that figure ignores the role of post-war immigrants from the Caribbean, India, Pakistan, and East Europe who helped rebuild the city after the World War. In any humane immigration policy, family reunification should be sacrosanct. Therefore, any attempt by the current government banning dependence of skilled workers is not only cruel but counterproductive. It undermines the social stability that the migrants seek to rebuild in the new country. Another complication that I see where UK signed a free trade agreement. Now, the irony is that Britain has agreed to fast-track visas for Indian chefs, yoga teachers, IT professionals and engineers. Now, how can it reconcile these obligations with the target of zero migration by end of this parliament term? Therefore, I see Britain at a crossroad. Policymakers must redefine a coherent vision, and they need to balance economic needs, youth disengagement, illegal migration, trafficking, human trafficking networks, and in the broader context, the global interdependence. Restrictive nationalism, as seen in the Americas by the Trump administration, hasn't solved America's immigration challenge either. The American economy, like Britain's, rely heavily on documented and undocumented immigrants for its low-skilled workforce. This is a known fact. And to those in Reform UK or the New Labour Party pushing for tighter borders, let us not forget that for 250 years, Britain maintained nearly 200 colonies across the globe, often ruling lands where they did not belong. They were the biggest immigrants in those faraway countries. So if I conclude my argument, migration is not a threat to society. It is the very foundation of human geography, and civilization progress on migration. Therefore, to curb it blindly and to wage a war against a natural rhythm of human geography and human history, Britain is losing sight of this natural process in the fog of political warfare, in the reaction to the political statements. And when the British Prime Minister delivers the island of stranger speech, he is not only reacting to his political statements, his political opponents in Reform UK Party, it is short-sighted and it is disruptive. With those arguments, I leave you until next week. Stay safe, stay informed, and dutifully ask questions. Bye for now.
You are listening to 93.9 Dublin South FM.
Broadcasting from the Dundrum Town Centre. This is Dublin South FM.